All right. Well, welcome back to the Why We Move podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo, and I have a very special guest on the show today. His name is Jaime. Can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry, brother. He's an awesome dancer. He's a phenomenal role model here in Portland, Oregon. And we got a very special story, including just the come up of Jaime and his journey through dance. So welcome, Jaime. Pleasure to have you, man. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So actually, it's Jaime.
Jaime?
Yeah.
Bro, what?
Yes, it's been Jaime.
Oh my God, man. I've been calling you the wrong name this whole time.
It's all good. It's all good.
Dude, you gotta tell me. You gotta correct me.
I didn't know. I never heard it.
I guess so.
Until
Yeah,
now.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, brother. Okay,
No,
so
it's all good.
It's Jaime.
Jaime.
All right, my bad. So, but I heard people call you Jaime.
So
No?
originally when I moved here, I think a lot of people know me as Jamie.
Right.
As like, just because that's the easiest way to say it. And then in terms of like, in reality, a lot of my close friends and family actually call me Jaime as when I grew up and everything.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's interesting this way.
You're like, all right, screw the podcast. I'm leaving. Sorry, Jaime.
No, it's all good.
Go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
So yeah, I'm Jaime. I've moved to Portland maybe like in December. And I'm very, very interested in bachata at the moment. Of course, I'm generally just a dancer, I guess. And I have other interests like salsa and potentially maybe zouk. But in a way, I'm just super focused on bachata right now.
Cool.
But yeah, moved all over from, grew up in the Philippines. And I think we moved to the US in New York maybe like when I was 11 or so. And then that's when I went to school and then college and everything. Then moved to Ohio for a job, and I was there for 10 years. And then here now in Oregon for about 2, and
Nice.
In Portland since December.
Cool, man. Very cool. Yeah, you've been all over. You've been east to middle to now west coast.
Yeah,
so,
gradually just moving out west. Probably gonna end up in the ocean soon.
Right. Might as well just hop over to Japan. Just go to the next one. Next island.
For sure.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for hopping on the podcast again. Really excited to share your story. I like to start these episodes off with just like a highlight, just like on you, just like kind of how you came up with dance, why you started with dance, what got you like involved. Give me like the whole general like description. You kind of went into a little bit of like where you came from and where you've been. So where in those, I think, stages did you start dancing?
Yeah, so I started about in 2015. So that was when I was in Ohio. And at that time, I had a 2-bedroom apartment. And one of my coworkers, his name is Chris, and he's Dominican, basically. So he just moved in for like a month as a transition period, and he just constantly played reggaeton and bachata. And then like I was like, this music is interesting because I didn't listen to that type of music before. I was more like R&B kind of like that that music genre. And all of a sudden, my world just like, ooh, this is interesting. Like, this is cool. But, at that point, it was just music to me. Like, it didn't really translate into a movement. And then there was one Friday when one of my friends invited me to go to La Fogata. It was almost like a restaurant plus like a bar upstairs, but they had like a social. And this is in Columbus. And then at that point, like, they were like, yeah, just free classes. You can take like, it's intro, it's salsa, and then there's bachata also. And at that point, I was like, I knew nothing about, the Latin culture in terms of the Latin dance scene. Zero idea as to how it would be. So, I was like, let's just go along for the ride and figure out where this goes. Cause it is interesting, to put yourself out there. It was super scary.
For sure.
And, but all of a sudden, I was like, ooh, okay. Let's see what we can do with this. Like, start learning more and like kind of maybe trying to go back and go to classes and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it was just, I was interested in the beginning, but I was also super nervous about it just because, as a beginner, you don't really know what to expect. Like, like one move, you just know the basic basically. And then like, that's all you do. But in general, that's how it kind of started in Columbus, Ohio. And then I kind of took my journey from there. joining like a dance team. And like we did some choreographies and then like performing congresses, not like super like pro level, but in a way it was just like trying to get yourself out there and build confidence and like, really like be be really like comfortable in a big audience where everyone's watching you and like super engaged into like, like what you're doing. So it's kind of like the idea behind it.
Very cool, man. So I didn't realize you started dancing in 2015.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's a long time, dude.
It is.
That's
But in reality, though, I feel like a lot of my growth happened here in Portland recently, actually, just because when I was in Ohio, I only went social dancing maybe like once a month or so. And then like, of course, like you do build habits along that time, but not enough like when we're here, literally you could go like 6 days of the week and then there's like some sort of social other than maybe a Monday right now. But it's definitely like a lot of the growth happened here recently.
Cool, man. Cool. I think I mean like mad respect to you starting in Columbus and then like getting in Ohio and getting into dancing and performing and all that. I think like kind of what I shared with you earlier, like with my chaotic life of just like traveling back and forth between the East Coast and the West Coast, and I'll explain to the listeners just a little bit more of just like how I met you is like, I saw you dancing social dancing at Aztecs on a Wednesday back when I was here for the winter. I think maybe December, January time. And I kind of saw you dancing and you were good. You were great, And I noticed something in you that though was like a little maybe reserved or shy. And this is not a new conversation, that we're having. We're just having in front of the camera now, in front of the microphone. But I kind of saw something in you where I was like, oh, this guy, like, it looks like he wants to, express himself. It looks like he wants to move. It looks like he wants to even just like shake your hips and shake your ass more, And then when I remember leaving and then coming back for the summer now, back in May, and I saw you out dancing again at Aztecs, and I was like, this dude is like totally brand new. Like, what happened? He just got like a refresh, something like remixed the system, and you were like moving all kinds of ways. And I was like, dude, that's sick. Like, you went from like in my head, just like a good dancer to like a phenomenal dancer.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, and I mean that fully. Like people like watch you on the dance floor, and it's like so cool to see that like you grab that attention and people like want to look at you. So, and I know we had this conversation earlier, but I want to maybe like refresh it for the listeners here. Is like, what was that maybe? Well, one, do you agree kind of like maybe that you've evolved since, the past few years, kind of what you mentioned with growing here in Portland, but like, what was that like for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, honestly, like I would say the idea sparked back in, it was in the Portland Salsa Congress of last year. And then one of their really big highlights was, it was Oliver Pineda. And then they brought him over, and I think it was, I can't remember his partner, unfortunately, or Mercedes. And then like they taught body movement and musicality, like, the basics of, dance and movement in general. And I was just like, how is it possible that they're moving like that? I was like, this is like some phenomenal stuff to me that I was just super curious about body movement in general and how you would express. Because for me, I have seen videos of myself like over the past, like, when I was dancing, like starting 8 years ago, and I was like, man, that looks stiff. I'm like, there's stuff I want to do, but I don't know how to.
Right.
So it's, like, I think the first step for me was to be aware that, like, one, I don't move like that at the moment, and that's okay. And then, like, what can we do to be able to move similar, at least, and, get some spark going into, like, to try and achieve that.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it really started at first. And I was just super curious. And that's when I started filming. And I just literally filmed my basics, just doing, like, a couple basics to figure out, okay, what's different? Like, what am I doing? I was like, what are my hips doing? What are my shoulders doing? What are my arms doing? And like that was the start. And then it was like, it was devastating looking at it first, because that first video, I was like, oh,
It's a little cringe
It's,
sometimes looking at yourself dance.
yeah, for sure. Even to this day, I still feel that way actually, but I feel like the feeling never really goes away.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the first moment that I had a realization that I was like, okay, let's do something to actually improve like body movement as a first step. And then like, after I moved here, that's when I realized, man, maybe I don't know what frame actually is. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is gonna be interesting, trying to figure out how do I actually establish frame? How do I promote, like, if the follower also doesn't have good frame, how do I promote that to, like, so that we can have a conversation in the dance floor with a really strong connection, kind of like that. So those were the questions I kept asking myself after like each social. Like in like, the post social day, I guess I would be there at my breakfast table, like me and Sophia would be thinking, oh, like, that was a good dance. But like, what made it a good dance? And like, what kind of like, what were the things that we both learned, or what were the things that like, I did something different, or what was that feeling like, kind of like that conversation. And I a lot of the times I internalize it in a way like, okay, maybe like put my shoulders down or engage my lats to like, have a good frame, and then like we can do things more smoothly and stuff like that. But like a lot of the times it was just a lot of like, figuring out my own leading, and like, oh, what do people like about my leading, kind of like, and then like reverse engineer it. Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's impressive.
I've put a lot of thought into at least that one, like thinking in my mind, like, oh, hey, that was a good move, or, it works, or something.
Interesting, man. That's really cool. Like, well, so the listeners know you're an engineer.
I am an engineer.
so to put it into dance, I think it's like phenomenal that you're able to like kind of piece that knowledge together.
Yeah.
I think that's so super interesting, being able to like really dissect it down and even have it in a conversation, like what you said at the breakfast table with your partner Sophia, like being able to talk it out and actually like dissect it in the open versus kind of in your mind. I think it's something different. And I remember learning this from a chemistry teacher back in college. She had told me like the best way to really learn something and really understand how you think about something is to write it out, is to talk it out, is to teach it out, is to play it out. And like we would have these exercises where we would to mention like things that you did good or worked, in that moment. And it starts to really come together in like a muscle, mind, and body connection. It's very interesting.
For sure. It just like reinforces what you've learned too. And then like all the experiences, it's almost like you're building a house within your brain. Like, this is the dance house. This is what worked today. And then like, build it piece by piece, kind of just memories of a dance house. Like
That's inspiring, man. Honestly, I'm going to take that. I'm going to write some notes later because I think I'm a very internal person. Like I keep a lot of things in my head. And, sometimes I just like don't have the knowledge enough to like say it out loud or like even just like the initiative to, but even having somebody to talk to it after is actually pretty great. So I'm going to take that home with me. That's a great piece of advice. So to kind of segue into the next thing, I think what other practices besides talking out loud helped you to achieve that next level in what you feel like improved your dance?
Yeah, honestly, I think like a really good feedback from like, like a person that, has been on the scene for a while, and like, hey, like, like for instance, for me, in my case, like at least in my own experience, like a lot of the feedback I got was like, your dance style is very flowy. But for me, like, I don't know what that meant other than I'm just, trying to make everything like as literally as smooth as possible. But in my mind, I'm like, hey, this move works with this specific thing. But honestly, before that, I guess I probably I probably like a couple years back, I used to shadow dance.
Oh, nice.
A lot. And then like I was like, when you know the first, like whoever, like you kind of have this like connection, I guess, right? And then you just know like the specific person's feeling in terms of like, how they are in terms of the dance floor. And then you embody it and you figure out like, okay, like this turn works with a specific thing, or like, this specific movement works with a specific timing. But a lot of it was like shadow dancing too. Like a very structured practice would like if we were to say, I guess there's two components to it. Like one, if you were taking classes, for instance, then that hour is literally for learning a new technique or a new thing, new information. Like we practice it for maybe 15 minutes of that entire thing. A lot of it is more first, like get the body moving to be correct, and then you practice it to a song, and then maybe you get like one or two songs within the hour of class. But I feel like that's not really enough to reinforce, because there's still the mastery of it, and then like the refining and like smoothing everything out. And I feel like a lot of that happens, one is just with time, or practice outside of class, because next week is going to be a different movement, it's going to be a different concept, is going to be a different thing. So then a lot of the material that we might have learned in the previous week is already like gone down the drain. So a lot of it, I feel like, is dedicating a specific amount of time to like practice maybe what you've learned, or what specific movement you want to target at that at that time. Like I'm so guilty about this, but I used to train everything within, like, let's say I have like an hour, like I have like 5 to 6, that's all I get. I would train my basic, I would train the spins, I would train body rolls, and then like it was just so chaotic. And I think I got too burnt out with it, because then you're not like targeting like a specific thing. So now I'm more structured in terms of what I want to practice. So like within that hours, I only have an hour or 30 minutes, I would just break down like a body roll into specific like slow body rolls, like get everything going, or spins where you're practicing just pivoting, or however the basic you want. And then filming is eye-opening. It's also very frustrating, and it's also it's probably one of the things that like helped me the most, honestly, because it really gives you like a true representation of because I feel like we all have an image as to how we would look like dancing. But then again, when the reality is, okay, we're not there yet, but that's okay. It's okay to be frustrated with it. But in reality, it's just like a continuous improvement. And it's also good to refer back to where we started, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. That's a very good piece of advice, I think, for every listener here. Is like, what's different about, what I hear from you versus what I hear from other people is like you have a set place to train and practice, and you call it training.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, to tackle one kind of thing about it is a lot of people think dance is not like a sport or a heavy activity. It's more for leisure and whatnot. And like it could be, I think for other people, they consider it. For other people, it's a leisure. For other people, it's a hobby. For whatever it is to you, it's just a matter of how serious you are with it. And it seems like you were very serious. You are very serious about it, because you train. You dedicate an hour outside of class.
Yeah.
You go to class for one, and then you dedicate more time outside, like, and you talk about it like you are involved. You are very like in it. So
I'm super immersed.
Yeah. So I give you props for that. It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I hear that there's like structure in a way, and for those listening who might need that, those are phenomenal pieces of advice. Like, create a plan, because I think, kind of like that cliche saying, if you don't plan, then you prepare to fail, in a way. And I forget, I'm paraphrasing here. Something like you don't prepare to plan. I don't even know. I'm not gonna go into it, but basically, you know what I'm saying.
I got the gist. Yeah.
So that's interesting, man. Like, that's really cool that you're able to dedicate a certain amount of time to it, because you're serious about it and you want to be In fact, actually, that's a good question. Is like, why do you train? Why do you dedicate so much time? Because I think it's different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So, what is that for you?
For me, like at the moment, I feel like dance has given me a lot in terms of like our stages in our lives. Like, I it's given me like one, like joy. It's so fun to connect. I'm super introverted, so like you don't normally see me talk in the dance floor just because of course it's loud and it's hard to hear, and I lose my voice the next day. But that's maybe one component of it. But I am just super introverted to begin with, so getting me to talk already is like it's sometimes it's difficult.
So thanks for coming on the podcast,
yeah,
man. This is probably like maybe nerve-wracking, but also great for you.
It's a stretch, but you know what? Let's expand our boundaries and figure
Awesome.
out where it goes.
That's beautiful, man. I love it.
But yeah, that was one component. And I felt like when I was in the dance floor, it's almost like your movement is talking. So I didn't have to talk, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, yeah, we're just expressing and having a conversation in the dance floor. And that's what I really look forward for. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like the people connection is really big, just because, as I mentioned, I was an introvert. So it's just the way, like, I would connect with other people, and then like it's feeling everyone's energies kind of like merge and figure out where that goes.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why I go out social dancing, and I want to improve that connection, that like, but the other big thing, I guess, is because that has like, the dance, I've been involved in it with like, I guess now 8 years. I want to start giving back. So I feel like one way to do that is to, I guess, almost like share what I have known. But at the moment, I'm actually in the studio that I'm in, VMAC. I'm trying to be more of an ambassador in training. That way I can like start leading like practicas and stuff like that. So before classes, so that we would reinforce what we've learned the previous week. So that's one goal, one idea that I have, at least in terms of giving back. So yeah, it involves also going back to the basics and like learning how to follow now. And then it's that one is a different journey on my own right now too. So it's interesting. So
Word. Yeah. I think in this episode, I'll actually link a little clip of us dancing.
Yeah.
You were following and then I was following, and then we switched the lead and follow. So I'm right there with you, man. The same thing. That journey of following is unique, and it really tests your mind.
Yeah.
I had a guest on here. The last episode that I recorded was with Stacy. Stacy.
Yeah.
And her and I switched the lead and follow also quite a bit, and it's really fun. I think it's like it tests my brain a lot to understand how I can just understand the opposite of what I usually am, right? And giving the signals, right? And it helps me in my leading because I understand, that felt that way. I should do something different. It's like a different mind to body connection.
Yeah, for sure. It really teaches you to have a super solid lead, because like, okay, that didn't feel so great, but why didn't it feel so great? Right. Like,
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting being on the other side of the lead and follow role, but I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, same. Cool. So it seems like you really pieced together like what has helped you in your dance journey and like allowed you to become better with those goals in mind, with those visions in sight. Is there, and I'm assuming that's only for bachata, like, because you said you're kind of focused on bachata right now.
Yeah.
Right? Are there any other dance styles that you wanna, or that you maybe enjoy aside from bachata, or like something that you want to improve on? Is there anything like that? Zouk, you had mentioned, right?
Zouk is Zouk is somewhere in there. It's somewhere in there, but it's definitely bachata first, and then like salsa. Like I do want to get better at salsa. At the moment, I am only taking what I've learned in bachata and applying it to salsa, and yeah, that also has had a growth spurt recently too, in terms of I'm like, oh, I can do stuff now, like just because now with a new frame and like learning how to build that connection and applying it to salsa has been very interesting, and I've been enjoying it a lot actually. It makes me want to, explore more of the salsa side for in the near future, once I feel comfortable enough that, I feel like, okay, let's take a break from bachata or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, salsa has been very, very high on the list for a very long time, and I keep putting it off. And I should consider a higher priority sometime soon. So
I mean, it's a lot, like just focusing on one dance already is
yeah,
very involved, and like to get another one, it's a whole nother beast. But in the sense, I like what you said with how some parts of what you learned in bachata helped you in your salsa. Like I think that's very true. For me, I kind of think about it in my head. Like I train mixed martial arts. I've been training since back when I was in high school, and I started boxing. And after boxing, I took on Muay Thai, and then with Muay Thai, I took on jiu-jitsu. I was in an MMA gym, so I just kind of learned it all. But I noticed that my boxing helped my Muay Thai, and then my Muay Thai helped my jiu-jitsu, and then vice versa in all the three different areas, whether it be footwork, whether it be positioning, whether it be defense, whether it be, finding the weak point in my opponent or whatnot. It's still it's different arts, but they still mix and match very well. And I think in salsa and bachata, even if you go into merengue or like, I don't even know, some other like even hip hop or like reggaeton, like a lot of the movements, maybe more in salsa and bachata are similar versus hip hop or something else, but like the rhythm, what you feel in musicality, even like the basics or like the pauses or it just kind of like mixes really well. So maybe could you give me like your side of that? What else do you think is like similar between the two for you with bachata and salsa or with zouk and whatnot?
Okay, yeah, I would say like, well, the first thing is just like the overall frame is generally the same. And then like for me, of course, since I'm a bachata at heart, the flow has to continue to salsa. It has to. So like I like my salsa to be flowy as well. That's why I'm a sucker for salsa romantica, just because that's a genre that I love because it's slow and then you can stretch out the entire beat, and that's what I enjoy in the dance.
Yeah.
And but other than that, I feel like turn patterns can carry over. You just have to figure out the timing. And the connection will always be generally the same. How you promote the connection, whether it's you starting it or whether the follower is asking for a specific type of connection, then you just pursue that.
Right.
And I would say the thing that I've also learned recently is be more grounded, and then because that's where everything falls into place. Like where your body weight is specifically, and like how do you push through the floor, and like what kind of like movement you're like how it impacts your hip, how it impacts your shoulders, how it impacts your upper body, because everything cascades from how we push through the floor. And I feel like that is similar, that I actually need to explore that soon to figure out like whether that's actually true, because I feel like in my previous videos looking at me doing salsa, like I felt like I was just very floaty. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I felt like I can get like thrown around easy. Like I didn't feel super secure in my steps and where my body weight is, and I felt disconnected between my upper body and lower body. And that's the one thing that I'm also working in bachata also. But I feel like those components, at least the very basic of it, applies to both dances, I would say. And also, like the frame is super critical now that I'm thinking about frame in general. Like ribs down, shoulders back. It also helps out in my general workout training too, because then you like figure out whether like oh, you're doing bench press. Like, am I arching too much?
Right.
Like, or am I doing shoulder press like all weird? Or
that's interesting. It really it comes off of the dance floor in a way.
Yeah.
That's actually one of my questions for you. So we can go right there. Is like, what have you learned from dance maybe that you've carried out into the external world outside off the dance floor? You had mentioned exercise. Is there anything else?
Say when you ask someone to dance, generally a very like approachable and open persona, or like like some sort of aura, I guess, is like nice. Like you don't have to say it because you can just feel it out. Like a lot of people, I feel like we have developed this sense of feeling how energies sort of like okay, like what kind of energy this person is doing. Is it closed? Is it open? Or something like that. But having that is also very good outside of dance, because you know how you ask someone out to dance in terms of stuff like that, but like generally just an overall good attitude and like a very open attitude goes a long way out in the real world too. So that's probably one of the things that I've learned, because you know, as you mentioned before, like when I started, I just used to I used to sit out salsa a lot. I never danced salsa. Like I was like,
it was break time.
It's break time. It's too much cardio. So I would just sit it out and I would just, you know, watch. And then like at that point, like, you know, I was like, okay, like I felt closed off. Like, you know, it's just like I was just watching my arms closed like this in the bar, like, you know, like, oh, like I felt like sad and stuff like that. And people would be like, why are you sad? Like, I'm not, like, you know, but it didn't seem like I was approachable at that time, just because, you know, this is the body language and stuff like that that I was embodying at that point. So I've learned that, like, you know, just relax and be open, and then like, you know, be approachable. And then it really goes a long way in terms of being out in the real world.
For sure.
I would say. But in terms of like practice and body movement, I feel like I've focused recently a lot more on flexibility and body control. And a lot of it is also just affecting my general workouts, like, you know, my general weight training and stuff like that. And before dancing, it used to actually be Olympic weightlifting.
Oh, no kidding.
So now that I'm actually curious, what if I were to go back to that sport, I'm curious to see what I would have, what I would apply. You know, like I just haven't had the time to explore that. Like, you know, what would be different? Like,
interesting, man. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm curious to actually, like, you know, explore sometime in the near future too.
Yeah, for sure. I think like even, I mean, you could probably, I don't know if you did this in your choreographies in the dance teams that you were on, but like any lifts.
Oh yeah.
Any kind of like those kinds of crazy movements, you know, that you probably don't see on the social dance floor, or better yet, shouldn't quite see on the dance floor because it's kind of dangerous, you know?
Yeah.
Unless you have permission and you have whatever, you know, but, you know, potentially it's like training right there, you know?
Yeah.
It's interesting what that kind of transition is. But
yeah, for sure.
I didn't know that about you, man. That's really cool.
It has been taken a back seat. Like, you know, I guess other hobbies I would do is like photography and weightlifting and social dancing.
Right.
But social dancing is like way up here. It takes up a lot of the time in terms of, you know, my other hobbies are taking a back seat for now. But that's okay. Sure. It's part of stage in our lives.
Exactly. Yeah. You just dedicate, you know, and like, I think it even like social dancing takes not only just a lot of time of the actual activity, but like takes a kind of a toll on your body. Like when when these dance nights or these socials are like, start super late in the evening, go till the morning, and then you wake up super groggy, or you work super early. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot of physical activity that we don't really like. Sometimes I don't even realize, but like, you know, within that 3 hours, we spend a lot of energy and a lot of calories just burning off, like dancing in general. So like, I love it because it keeps me fit at least.
Right. I wish I had that, man. Sometimes like too much cardio can kick me in the butt, but I do know like the beautiful thing about dance for me is I drink a lot of water. Oh, yeah. I sweat like crazy. So like I'm always going back and forth between dances, grabbing a cup of water and chugging it. So my hydration is good. You know, my skin is great. Yeah. I sweat all the toxins out. And drink water.
For sure.
There's something that I wanted to kind of peek on. You had mentioned earlier about like the being grounded. Mm-hmm. I've noticed, this is another thing that I've noticed since the last time I saw you in the winter, is that you give more eye contact now. And that's something that like I preach to a lot of people about, even like, and tell myself a lot too, is like, when I'm in a dance with somebody, I'm always trying to like engage, and like in a non-creepy way, you know, like obviously like you feel and you understand what the person is like feeling in a way, or like if they're feeling uncomfortable, you obviously don't want to like gaze at them or whatever, but like giving a gentle smile, like a comforting, hey, I'm here with you. There's nothing else that matters except this dance currently in this present moment, you know? And it's interesting because I see constantly, always on the dance floor, people are always looking around, looking at their next dancer that they want to dance with, or like looking at their feet or just like don't want to make eye contact. And I think there's a beautiful thing when you start to do that you kind of dive deeper into that connection with that person you're dancing with, and it makes a dance so much better.
Oh yeah.
Like aside from what I tell a lot of people too is like breathing, breathing with your partner. Like even when you start, you don't go right into a crazy move, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm kind of guilty of that with my friends because I just want to be always surprising and like give something fresh. But sometimes I just like stop with, if there's somebody new that I'm dancing with, and I do a quick step tap in bachata, or like a, really small basic, and I start to sync my breathing with that person, because that initiates like a comforting, like, hey, like we are on the same frequency. We're on the same wavelength. And so like this dance is going to be great because of that.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that you make a lot more eye contact with your follows, which is awesome, dude. I think like that's one of the things that has exploded my dancing in the past, that like I understood is not about the moves or about the crazy like turns or the hand movements or the dips and the tricks and all that. It's just legit connection. So maybe could you go into like, what is that for you? Do you like, because I know you kind of came from an introverted side, so maybe that was a little hard for you. It was hard for me.
It was hard. That's actually very recent too. It was hard. I think it comes in two parts. The first part, I feel like, is even for me, when I think, I normally like, I can't, like, I have to either look that way or look down, or you look somewhere else. Like you look down at your feet, or you figure out whatever, look up or something, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of that is more or less trying to remember turn patterns. I feel like, because then it's almost like you're just trying to see, okay, what are we doing next in this specific, 8 count? What's coming up, or you're trying to connect to, or figure out whether there's like, a big break in the dance or something. I feel like maybe that is one of the cause of not having like eye contact is
like you're thinking.
You're thinking. Yeah, you're just thinking about, constantly thinking about moves after moves, which actually is like a little bit of a detriment. I feel like it's good, to start thinking of moves ahead of time, but also it breaks the connection. And then, because, of course, the first leading is actually visual, right? And I feel like, how, like, we can move side to side, but I don't have to, like, we don't have to be physically touching each other to move side to side. You can just move side to side just by visually.
Right.
So I think visual contact and establishing that is like super critical. And, of course, that just builds a stronger connection with whoever you're dancing with, whether it's a lead or whether it's a follow that you're specific to your partner in that specific moment. And that was what was happening to me before. Like when I didn't make eye contact, is because I was just so focused on the move. What are we doing next? Like I was just thinking. I wasn't in the moment.
Yeah.
And then it took a while, but someone mentioned, why don't we have eye contact as often? And then I was like, I wasn't aware. See, like, so sometimes it just takes someone to actually mention something because we're not aware of it, because we're constantly in our heads and like, we're just thinking. And then like we forget about what the essence of dance is, which is like establishing connection and, having a conversation with movement and within that, 3 minutes.
Right.
And I feel like that's one. And then the other is just like, it's a new thing for me and it's scary, but let's figure out where this goes in terms of like, I feel like it just makes whoever you're dancing with more open. It's not like super scary to look at someone in the eye too. And it's just like, it just promotes like openness, I guess. Because like, we're not hiding anything. Let's have this conversation, and then like, it'll be fun for the next 3 minutes. Like we're not gonna stare at each other's eyes for 3 minutes, but yeah, it's I think it enhances the connection a lot.
For sure, totally agree with you there. It's interesting because a lot of people feel like reserved in a way, and I think it like, or maybe uncomfortable, and that's okay. Like you don't have to give eye contact the whole time. Of course, I think I always think it's like highly recommended because it makes the dance better. Like what you said, it's more connected. But there's definitely some like a piece of that I think we should talk about, because I feel like that gives permission to people to just make eye contact and kind of be creepy, which I don't want to get into. You know, for those who are listening and those who are watching, that's not what we're trying to say here. It's like people who are like like looking at you all creepily, like definitely don't make eye contact with those people. You know, like if you feel uncomfortable, legit, you can say no and you can like walk away from the dance, because there's unfortunately things like that happen. And I bring that up because I make it a point in every episode to make it for maybe those who are listening, who are beginning or who are getting into dancing or who are interested in dancing, like that there are things like that happen on the dance floor, unfortunately. Yeah. A lot of my friends have been victims, and I've been in those scenarios where like I just get uncomfortable dancing with somebody. They make me feel uncomfortable, or they push a boundary physically, verbally, or emotionally with me that I have to say no, and like I just don't want to go through that again. You know. Clearly, I think it's a lot worse for follows and for maybe more so for females in the dance floor. But just knowing that it happens still, and it happens for everyone, that you have the ability to say no. And so like that eye contact thing, I think, like if somebody's looking at you, to look away, you know, like, put a blindfold on them or something, or just walk away, you know, from the dance. But I think it's important to say, because it's not like you have to, you know, like pierce their soul with your eye contact. It's just like an invitation to connect, you know.
For sure. There's a big difference when you're just like wide open, like,
And
look at me.
Look at me, please. Anyways, but I just wanted to say that because I think it's important to talk to
for sure.
Something that I want to go into, maybe we can like end with a little bit of this, is besides the phenomenal pieces of advice you've already given on this podcast, what other pieces of advice would you give to beginners who are starting to learn to social dance, or you think that are fundamental principles that they should know coming into dancing? And I think it could really serve anybody, not just beginners, but intermediates, advanced dancers, professionals.
For sure. I would say this is like, in reality, I am a beginner in salsa. At least in my mind, I am. But I would say it's not the number of moves that you know, but it's the quality of the moves and how you execute it. And like, you know, how you make the person in front of you feel is the general essence of the dance. And that's what I get. Like, I feel like that's where my main focus for the dance is. It's not going to be like, you know, the perfect musicality. It's not going to be like the perfect, you know, combinations of turn patterns, but the quality of the movement and the quality of the connection is what I focus on. So I would say this is really difficult, especially if, you know, as a starting point, a beginner, because like, you know, beginners, you tend to still focus on the 1, 2, 3, and it's hard to like feel what the music is doing, or feel like, you know, what are we doing next? Because that question will always happen. That will never go away. Whether you're a pro or not, that will never go away. Yeah. What are we doing in the next 8 counts? Never goes away. You're always thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it's okay to think about it, but also like be in the moment, and then really focus on how you make each other feel goes a long way, and it goes like super far into like, you know, how you build connection with that specific person, like, you know, how it affects your next dance also. And I would say dance with as many people throughout the night as possible. And it doesn't matter whether you think they're a beginner, you think they're a pro, like what level you are in the dance, because you'll always learn something. And like honestly, like I wish there are more hours in a dance social where I could dance with every single one person, because then I feel like I always learn something within that. But yeah, like dance with as many people, because I feel like sometimes when we dance with the same people, we get accustomed to their movements, right? And then like we're just used, and it becomes a choreography. It becomes a turn pattern dance, and then the feeling is not there. I'm always like looking for going after the feeling of the dance versus like, it being, I executed the move really well. Like, yeah, like I wish I could do that again to the next person, but it's never gonna be like that. It's always like, okay, how did I make this person feel? Kind of like deal. So go for the feeling. Go for the feeling. I know it's very vague and it might be like super abstract, but there is that component of it.
For sure. That's awesome, dude. That's a beautiful piece of advice. I think, and this is why I like wanted to invite you, especially on this podcast, is because I think you have you already exemplify that on the dance floor with everyone you dance. And so I knew there was like some kind of like verbal component that you can explain it well, and you've done it this whole 45 minutes that we've been talking. So I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for everything, every piece of wisdom you've shared with me. I've taken notes, and I'm going to take home and train and do all these things and apply it to my dancing. So thank you for being not only just a good role model in the dance floor, but a great friend and a great person to just learn from. So thank you again. Can we, do you have anything else that you'd like to share? Maybe any social media platforms that you want people to find you, if you want people to find you?
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram, handle j.paulo.t.
Cool, yeah. Yeah, make sure to check out his photography, by the way. He does a killer job.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's in the works. It's still, I need to get back into it, but it's definitely taking a backseat to dancing right now, but I definitely want to get back into it.
Cool, man. Cool. Yeah, well, maybe we can do some video and photos sometime, man. I'd love to go shoot.
For sure.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We'll end it here and look forward to seeing you on the dance floor again.
Oh, yeah, dude.
All right. Thank you.